Grounded at its core is the same as any other survival game. You wake up, eat some food, drink some water, then you explore to fight enemies and gather materials. That is not necessarily where it outshines the competition, even though it is still enjoyable. With these aspects, Grounded is just as strong as the competition, if not stronger. But where it is different is what makes Grounded the game that has surged in popularity. Anyone can add insects into a game, but not everyone can make it feel as though they're really there. Most games should just throw some bugs in, have them attack you frequently, and call it a day. That is not what Grounded does. They put insects into the game and made it seem as though they're really thinking. They carry out day-to-day tasks without much interest in the player at all. The ants, for example, can be found gathering materials for their anthill, and you can often see them in a pack attacking smaller insects like weevils to get food. When these groups attempt to raid your base, they often just want to get food out of your baskets, which seems realistic. Then there's the predator type of insects, which includes two types of spiders, larvae, bombardier beetles, and stink bugs. These insects attack on sight and seem to have no goal other than to kill you, and this is where the combat comes in. The combat in Grounded is very simple, but it feels rewarding when you master it. All there is a block and an attack, but with the blocking mechanic there is something called a perfect block. It is basically a parry in any other game, where if you press the block button at the right time, it will counter the attack. It takes some time to learn the system and the attacks the different bugs have, but once you have, you're on your way to being the best bug slayer in the backyard. There are also a few weapon types like the bow, the knife, the blades, the clubs, and the spear. There are variations between all of the weapons, but they each fall roughly into one of these categories. The clubs deal good damage and have a stun effect that is very useful. The knives have low damage but fast attacks, and a couple even have poison damage. The bows are for people who don't want to go near their opponent to avoid harm, and the spear is a basic weapon you make from the start that you use until you can upgrade to one of the other weapon types. Every insect has a different attack pattern and even have projectiles that can be quite deadly, which makes combat much more enjoyable. In most games, fear is overdone to the point where it's hard to push forward without the gut feeling that something will go horribly wrong. Obsidian did a great job of creating the feeling of fear without making the game feel like it was too scary. Early game is where this shows the most. Seeing an orb weaver or wolf spider will likely scare you and get your heart racing, but honestly, if you do die, there's hardly a consequence. You just have to go back and grab your bag, so it's not the end of the world. With this fear, it gives a goal to overcome it, which feels very rewarding once accomplished. Once you are strong enough and have enough skill to see an orb weaver and not be scared, to know if they attack you that you can win is a great feeling. For me, this came several hours into the game. It was not immediate in any sense. Once I got to this point, it felt as though I achieved a great goal. I no longer had to worry about them. Even at this point, there are still challenges though. Fighting an orb weaver is much different than a wolf spider, which is why the game is more difficult than assumed by the cartoony aspect of the visuals. Fighting a stink bug or a bombardier beetle are completely different fights, and once you master them, you can fight them all you want. But until then, it just has a way of feeling fresh. Most survival games will throw you on an island in the middle of nowhere, with no more explanation than a brief backstory. That's changed with Grounded. With Obsidian Entertainment making the game, you can count on a strong story. While launching into early access puts an unfinished game out, in a way this was one of the smartest things they could have done. No one knows how long the story is, but we want to find out, and by giving the players only a bite of the story at first, it keeps players around and intrigued to see what's next. Obsidian has said that they plan to give an update to add content once each month, which keeps the game fresh and gives new objectives, but also keeps people from rushing through the entire game in one sitting. If you did this, you would not be able to appreciate the landmarks all around the backyard or even explore at all really. If there's something you aren't a big fan of in the game, chances are it'll get fixed, and that is a promising idea to have while playing a game that should last quite a while. Finally, the most obvious part that most likely caught your eye when you saw gameplay is the perspective. It's not every day that you see the world from the size of an ant. The materials are all fun and new, using grass blades instead of cutting down trees and dandelions as a wood plank of sorts. Getting stranded in the middle of the woods or on an island and needing to cut down trees to build a shelter is beginning to be played out. With the whole new world of cutting down grass blades and grabbing big mushrooms that in real life would be tiny, it feels fresh and entertaining like you've never done it before. You can build bases instead of pop cans on top of fence posts, under branches, or roots of trees. Everything in the game feels new beside the core mechanics of a survival game that is truly forgiving when it comes to food and water. Grounded was the best-selling game on Steam when it released into early access and had over 1 million players in the first 48 hours. It's also had over 200,000 viewers on Twitch since then. If you ask me, this is only the beginning for Grounded, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing.